Area. A particular part of a place, piece of land, or country. For example, this is a very poor area. Bay. An area of water sheltered by land on three sides. For example, San Francisco Bay. Beach. A flat, sloping area of sand or small stones beside the sea or a lake. For example, let's go to the beach. Campsite. A place in a campground or by itself where you can camp. For example, the campsite is in a beautiful location next to the beach. Canal. A channel of water artificially made for boats to travel through or to carry water from one area to another. For example, today, the canal is still used by ships. Cliff. A high area of rock with a steep side, often on a coast. For example, keep away from the edge of the cliff, you might fall. Desert. A large, dry area where there is very little rain and few plants. For example, they were lost in the desert for 9 days. Earth. The land surface of the world rather than the sky or sea. For example, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars are called rocky planets. Farm. An area of land, usually with fields and buildings, used for raising animals and growing crops as a business. For example, my family has worked on this farm for generations. Field. An area of land, used for growing crops or keeping animals, usually surrounded by a fence. For example, the field was planted with many trees. Forest. A large area full of trees, usually wild. For example, the children got lost in the forest. Harbor. An area of water next to the coast, often protected from the sea by a thick wall, where ships and boats can shelter. For example, our hotel room overlooked a pretty little fishing harbor. Hill. An area of land that is higher than the surrounding land. For example, hills are not as high as mountains. Island. A piece of land completely surrounded by water. For example, Manhattan is an island. Lake. A large area of water that is not salty and is surrounded by land. For example, we used to go boating on that lake. Land. An area of ground, especially when used for a particular purpose such as farming or building. For example, this sort of land is no good for growing potatoes. Mountain. A raised part of the Earth's surface, larger than a hill. For example, we're spending the weekend in the mountains. Ocean. A very large area of sea. For example, these mysterious creatures live at the bottom of the ocean. Path. A way or track made by or for people walking on the ground, or a line along which something moves. For example, this is the path to the cliffs. Port. A town by the sea or by a river that has a harbor, or the harbor itself. For example, this is one of the furthermost ports of Northern Europe. Railway. The metal tracks on which trains run. For example, we live close to the railway line. Rainforest. A forest in a tropical area that receives a lot of rain. For example, a tropical rainforest. Region. A particular area or part of a state, country, or the Earth's surface. For example, wheat is the major crop of this region. River. Water that flows naturally through a wide channel that is surrounded by land. For example, we went swimming in the river. Rock. The dry solid part of the Earth's surface, or any large piece of this that sticks up out of the ground or the sea. For example, mountains and cliffs are formed from rock. Sand. A substance that consists of very small grains of rock, found on beaches and in deserts. For example, the children played all day in slash on the sand. Scenery. The general appearance of the natural environment, especially when it is beautiful. For example, they stopped at the top of the hill to admire the scenery. Sea. A large area of salt water that is partly or completely surrounded by land, or the salt water that covers most of the surface of the earth. For example, the seas are filled with creatures we know nothing about. Seaside. The area near the sea, especially where people spend their holidays and enjoy themselves. For example, let's go to the seaside at the weekend. Sky. The area above the earth, in which clouds, the sun, etc. can be seen. For example, we looked up at slash into the sky at the sound of the plane. Stream. Water that flows naturally along a fixed route formed by a channel cut into rock or ground, usually at ground level. For example, a mountain stream. Valley. An area of low land between hills or mountains, often with a river running through it. For example, the path descended steeply into the valley. Village. A group of houses and other buildings that is smaller than a town, usually in the countryside. For example, a mountain village. Waterfall. Water, especially from a river or stream, dropping from a higher to a lower point, sometimes from a great height. For example, this tour takes in the area's best-known natural features, including the Gullfoss waterfall. Wood. A hard substance that forms the branches and trunks of trees and can be used as a building material, for making things, or as a fuel. For example, mahogany is a hard wood,